What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram at talklouder_podcast, and of course our website, talklouderpodcast.com, where you can find links to our merch and also links to our previous 100 plus episodes. I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host Jason McMaster. And man, today we are honored to have easily one of the greatest bass players to ever walk the planet. We've got Billy Sheehan on the Talk Louder podcast today. And man, what a history, what a player, what a great guy. So many stories to share, so many accomplishments, and he was just magnificent.
He's one of the nicest, genuine people in the music business. You could probably say that about quite a few people, but people in the music business get a bad rep because they might be having a bad day and they treat some fans, they kind of diss some fans. I don't see Billy being able to even let that happen. We talk about that a little bit, and how he actually enjoys making someone's day just by giving them an autograph, just by writing his name or saying hello or anything like that. It just proves that it's really easy to make someone's day just by acknowledging them and give them a fist bump or, signing something for them. It takes 2 seconds, and he's like the king of that. We talk about Talas, the new record, 1985, and we get into that, but we also go through, myself guilty, a bunch of name dropping, but I at least kind of wait for him to mention that first before I kind of throw it in there. The history between us and Talas is the Yngwie show. Yeah. Because I feel like that may have been the first time Talas had come through San Antonio or Austin. It's very possible they came through opening for Van Halen in 1980, just a few years earlier. We didn't really get into that part of his touring history and Texas, where me and Dave are. But what a great time I had today talking to this gentleman.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're talking about Talas. They've got a new record coming out called 1985. It drops in September, and Talas is the band that we first saw Billy Sheehan perform in. Of course, he went on to play with David Lee Roth, Mr. Big, the Winery Dogs. He's currently in Sons of Apollo, which we didn't even touch on today. The guy has done so much. And he's got so many great stories associated with each step in his career, and he was so kind to share them with us today. We should just let him do the talking. Billy Sheehan on the Talk Louder podcast. My co-host here, Jason McMaster, has some history with you, and actually I have some history with you. The first time I ever saw you was with Talas opening for Yngwie Malmsteen in 1985 on the Rising Force tour. I saw you in San Antonio, Texas, and the very next night in Austin, Texas, Jason's band Watchtower opened for you.
Right.
On that same tour.
Well, that's cool. That's a little history.
In the old airplane hangar of the Austin City Coliseum.
Right on.
Yeah. And then years later, we were at the Rainbow, and I'm at the bar, and it was a little busy, and I caught the barkeep's attention, and I put in my order, and you leaned in and said, and add a blah, 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 and a blah, blah, blah to it, and I'm paying for it. And I was like, whoa. Right. And I looked over, and it was Billy Sheehan, and I'm like, awesome.
Man.
So thank you again.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
So tell us about that tour a little bit. It was the first time you came onto my radar. You're out with Yngwie Malmsteen with Talas, and you had previously done a tour with Van Halen in 1980 as the opener with Talas. So compare and contrast those two tours, because Van Halen at that point is already well on their way to world domination, and you're playing big places, I assume. And then
Yeah.
with Yngwie, you're an upcoming band, and honestly, so is Yngwie at that time. So take us back to those two tours and sort of compare and contrast them for us.
Yeah, the Van Halen tour in 1980, they were, I always say on their worst night, they were only spectacular. They were so great. We stayed every night after our show and watched every show, and they're just unbelievable. They were great people too. They were very kind to us. They let us do encores and stuff like that. And
Wow.
when the tour started, we didn't know those guys at all. We're from the other side of the country, over in Buffalo, New York.
Right.
And we're in the dressing room waiting to go on. The dressing was kind of L-shaped, so where I was seated, I could see the door, but no one else in the room could see who was walking in. So I'm seated there, and the door opens up, and in walks Ed Van Halen. And the first thing he goes is, which one of you guys is Billy Sheehan? I said, me, I am it. And I don't know how he heard of me prior to that. It might have been from Denny Carmassi, because I'd worked with Denny on the Michael Schenker record in '79, and we worked a little bit together. So maybe that's where it came from. But later on, the guys in the band said, if you could have seen your face, we knew somebody walked in. We didn't know who it was, but that was pretty cool. And they were very, very kind to us. And we played, pretty huge arenas.
Yeah.
The Oakland Coliseum. We did all across the country, too. I think it was the last leg of their tour for Women and Children First.
Wow.
And we ended down in Florida. And that was how everything began for me. Later on, of course, Dave contacted me, and I went to play with him. But the Yngwie tour, we had just signed with a William Morris agency in Talas, and also got a record deal with Gold Mountain Records. Danny Goldberg. He later went on to manage Nirvana, and a wonderful guy in the music biz. And that same week, we got those two calls for William Morris and from Danny Goldberg. And then a third call came in, and that was Dave Roth's office, seeing if I'd like to speak with Dave about being in his movie. And I thought, what? Movie? And so I was going out to LA to start the tour with Yngwie that the William Morris agency set up. And I would be there. I have a day off when I got there. So I went to, they picked me up and took me out to Dave's house. And he said, there is a movie, but that's not why I called you. And
Wow.
He goes, I left Van Halen and want to start a band. And so you and me, let's go find a guitar player. Let's go find a drummer. And
Wow.
I said, well, I always said I would never leave Talas for any band other than Van Halen. I said,
Right.
You know what? Close enough. That was going.
Wow, it's like some secret squirrel going on. I want you to be in my movie.
Yeah, it worked out. And I had actually spoken with Ed when I got there the day before. I called him up and said, hey, Ed, we're playing with Yngwie at the Palladium. I wanted to invite you down. He goes, I'm in the middle of some stuff. I can't come, sorry. He goes, yeah, I'm going to have a meeting with Dave tomorrow. He goes, what? You're going to have a meeting with Dave? And because nobody knew anything at this point. And I thought, geez, I just opened my mouth. I go, yeah, he said he wanted to talk to me about his movie or something. And so Ed goes, you got to call me back as soon as you get back from the meeting and tell me what happened, because we think he's going to pull an Ozzy Osbourne, meaning he's going to leave the band, be the lead guy, and hire new guys around him, like apparently Ozzy Osbourne did with Black Sabbath. Mm-hmm. So needless to say, after having the meeting with Dave, I thought, okay, if I call Ed and rat Dave out, I'm going to lose that gig. So I just said, let me just keep my mouth shut from here on out. And years later, I spoke with Ed again. We became friends after I left Dave, and we laughed about it then. But so that whole tour with Yngwie and Talas, I couldn't say anything. So I knew that when the tour's over, we're going to have a little meeting, and I tell these guys, sorry, I got to go. So it was a bittersweet, to say the least.
Yeah.
It was a great tour. And Yngwie would go on stage, and I'd go on stage. Oh yeah, and he was just on fire. He was just so great, and he was always great with me. Very kind to me and very cool. I have great regard and respect for Yngwie. He just really was a grandmaster, and he really turned the course of history for guitar in many ways.
Yes.
Similar to Ed on a much grander scale, of course, without a doubt. No, there's no arguing that. But Yngwie, when that first record came out, man, he spun everybody's head around.
Right. Well, we could say the same about you on the bass.
Well, that's very kind.
I have a question.
It's not kind, it's fact.
Yeah, it is. It's truthin'.
I think it's pretty well known.
It's not boasting. It's truthin'.
Thank you.
You're based out of Buffalo originally, and did you have a Buffalo road crew?
Yeah. Everybody was from Buffalo on the crew. Phil and Mark, lead singer and drummer, were from Rochester, because Buffalo was mostly Talas based. But Buffalo and Rochester, we incestuous relationship we had with the different bands between the two. Buffalo, Rochester, Toronto, a bunch of other cities, all kind of in close proximity. We all kind of got each other's radio stations too, so we could hear what was going on in the other cities. The crew guys were all from Buffalo.
Your sound man, was it? Who ran sound on that tour?
I think it was Rick Deasing.
Okay. Do you remember a guy named Tim Mark? They called him Quake.
Yeah, Quake. Oh, it might have been Quake. It was Quake.
Yeah. Quake ended up being I learned so much from him. He was I met him in '89 and did like an 11-month tour with Quake at the helm, and he was my tour dad. It was my first big tour I'd ever done, and I just learned everything from Quake. And I just ran into him recently in Atlantic City, but me and my band, we just learned everything from him, and he would tell us. He would tell us about days with, and the crew was from Buffalo. Like more than half of our guys were from Buffalo, and they worked under Quake with other projects. But he would talk about Talas all the time, and we would, tell us again, Dad, kind of thing. It was great.
Our crew all of our crew guys went on to, dare I say, greatness. Rick Deasing was one of our sound guys. He went off. He was mixing Slayer for years and a lot of huge, heavy bands. He's still very active. Great front of house. Quake, been all over with a million bands, all huge, famous things. We had a lighting guy named Butch. He went on to do Christina Aguilera and all these huge acts, and one of the huge lighting guy. Jimbo was one of our main guys too. He went on to work for Center Staging in LA, and was just he had a huge career in the production business. Fire, he's still a dear friend of mine. He lived here in Nashville briefly. He went on to I forgot what it is he does, but he was a internal part of our whole thing. But everybody that ever worked or went through the Talas camp went somewhere.
It's good to be able to say that. I feel
pretty cool.
Talent on stage and behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's talk Talas a little more in the modern sense. You've got a brand new album coming out. What's the release date on that?
September 23rd.
September 23rd. Okay, yeah. September 23rd. The album's titled 1985, and essentially it's what would have been your fourth album had Talas stayed together at that time. Is that correct?
For the most part, we hadn't had a real plan at that point, but I'm sure all those songs would have been on it. And we were pretty prolific writers, and Phil as well writes a lot. So we had enough material, and we did get signed. But then again, like I said in the beginning of my story here, at that point I had to leave, and I left them with the name. I actually sold the name to them for $1. You have to do that in business. There's got to be some money changed hands.
Right.
So will you guys go ahead, and I'll do what I can to help you and whatever. They got a few other guys here and there. Unfortunately, didn't stay together. But Phil went on, and he sang with a million bands and recorded constantly and performed constantly. Mark Miller kind of dropped out of the biz a little bit, but still continued to play. And Johnny Angel moved out to L.A. Mitch moved back to L.A., Mitch Perry. And so I saw him out there once in a while when I was hanging around, both of them. So, what was the question? I forgot.
No, I was just confirming that album would have essentially been
that's
your
right.
fourth album.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
So some of those songs were recorded on the live Speed on Ice record, but that record, it was kind of a hurry up, and we were kind of pushed into it. The record company at that time, Important Records or Relativity Records and Combat, they were all kind of the same label. Come on, we got to put a new record out with a new band lineup. And I said, yeah, we're not ready, really. So they recorded the live shows, and it was okay. But all of us felt, man, we wish we'd had a little time to let this sink in more and do it properly and stuff. But I like the record. It captures a moment, but it was hurried up, and there was aspects of it that weren't to our liking completely. So
how many songs from that live record ended up on 1985?
I'm not sure, because I forgot which ones were on it.
There's at least two. I'm pretty sure there's at least two. Intermounting Fire, and I think there's at least one more. I've listened. Let's keep moving. I've listened to the new single. And I dig it. I dig the album cover.
I love the album cover.
Yeah, right. I think that when you call something 1985, you've got to have something that encompasses that a little bit. That's kind of a heavy, there's no doubt when my eyes see that, my brain does something, and you guys nailed that. So whose ever idea that?
Your brain goes back to the future.
Who did?
Exactly.
Yo.
That was Hugh Syme, what a legendary album cover artist and a wonderful guy. We're in great debt to him for doing this for us. Really, really wonderful. He was friends with Phil as well, and he just nailed it. It was so great. I remember when I first got it and opened up that little PDF file and sort of, perfect. This is exactly what we're talking about. And Back to the Future was 1985 also. Yeah. So that was quite a coincidence there, and we also the way I've been describing the record, when we decided to record it, we had two choices. We could slick everything up and modernize it, and bring it up to date, and revamp it and renovate it and make it a new thing, or get in a time machine and go back to 1985. And Hugh Syme made this album cover pretty great, I thought, and that's what we did when we were recording the record too. We just decided, let's do it the way we did it, and we set up in Mark Miller's living room in the house that he built on the drum kit that he built, and we went through the basics of the tracks, laid them down. I did any bass changes or fixes here in my studio, and then Phil sang. Curie did his guitar here as well. Phil sang in Toronto. And with either Zoom or FaceTime, we would be our talk back from Nashville to Toronto. And on my music computer, we had some software called Audio Movers, and it would allow me to listen in real time. I have no idea how they do that. It's like it's beyond magic. So I could listen in real time to the mix and Phil singing through my studio monitors, full fidelity. Wow. And then we could talk back, so I could produce the vocals with them face to face on. So we really, as much as we went back to the future, we utilized the futuristic digital formatting here to do a record in two different cities, because during the pandemic and nobody could travel much. And
right.
Well, you kind of were living in some kind of time machine. Real time.
One foot in the past and 1 foot in the modern technology.
The joke is on us, Wow.
We should tell people that haven't seen the album cover. It's a DeLorean, hence all the Back to the Future references. It's sort of a wrecked DeLorean out in the woods, kind of with everything growing over it. And Hugh, his credits include also Rush and Fate's Warning, so people might be familiar with some of his previous artwork.
We could do a whole podcast on Hugh Syme. There's
it lends a great visual to your album.
Great.
So when you're putting that album together, obviously you're revisiting the music. What memories come rushing back to you at that time that you're revisiting these songs that have been sitting basically idle since 1985, and you're thinking about putting this album out? I'm sure your head is going, your memories are come rushing back. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a time of a glorious struggle. The struggle was real, and it was a real struggle. We were slamming 2 hours a night, pack the gear up, get in the van or band car or whatever we were traveling at the time, go to the next city, on no sleep, hit it again, and finally get like a Motel 6 somewhere to close your eyes for a couple hours, and then do it again and do it again. So we were hitting it really hard, and there was no, as you both know, I'm sure, there's no guarantee if you get a record deal or some little bit of a step towards success. No guarantee that anything's going to happen. So we were just kind of running on fumes. To keep going and going and going until something broke. And Talas was kind of like that for quite a while, since the late 70s. I remember on the Van Halen tour, John Kolodner, a famous record company exec and producer, on the side of the stage jumping up and down. Talas, this is the best live band in America. We thought, we're signed, this is it, woo! Never heard from him again.
Wow.
we did a showcase for Clive Davis himself in a rehearsal room in New York City. Band on stage, Clive Davis and 3 other guys in suits, sitting, no pressure, just sitting in front. And we did our whole set, and we playing like there's 10,000 people here. We got done, and the band live is just amazing. We love the band live. We want to hear some more material. So we go in the studio, record some stuff, send it down there. Arista Records gets it. Hey, this material is great, really fantastic. But we're wondering, how's the band live? We just did this. And so it went on, it just never went anywhere. So it was a very frustrating and very difficult time for me personally, because I didn't know if anything would ever happen. I could be working at a donut shop in Lackawanna, New York, or something like that.
The music business always, it never surprises me now at this point, the blind leading the sighted.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
On that note, you said, what were some, I call them disposable jobs that you get when you're young that are sort of in between gigs, to keep gas in the truck or whatever. What were some of the jobs you might have had there in Buffalo growing up before, sort of in between, I got to get off this time because I have a gig tonight, I can't work that day because I'm going on tour or blah, blah, blah.
I was always able to support myself by playing, which was amazing. Unbelievable. And a lot of bands at that time did. I mean, I had my own apartment, I had my car, all of us, and we had crew, sound, truck, lights, office, agent, manager. All of that was financed by us playing live in clubs, and that was pretty incredible.
You guys were four
crew guys. On salary, so we hit it hard. But at one point in the very early years, just because I wanted more money so I could buy more gear, the guy who started me playing, his name is Joe Hesse. He's a bass player in Buffalo, lived around the corner from me. He's a real cool guy and a bass player. I wanted to be like Joe, so I started playing bass to be like Joe. And he stopped playing for a while and started doing carpet installation. So he'd say, hey, if you want to help me, I'll pay you by the day. And so I'd get home at night from playing, and I hear him beep the horn outside my apartment, get up 6 a.m, go out, get in the truck. And Joe's a little guy, and I'm a skinny twig. And we're all on these like 400 or 500 pound rolls of carpeting, carpeting all this crazy stuff. And I was rolling in money at the time. I didn't really need the carpeting. And he paid me on an honor basis to, well, what do you work today? I go, maybe $40, okay, here you go. Or I was slow, give me 20 or, whatever.
Wow.
So we had the honor system of being paid, which was quite nice. And he's still one of my dearest friends, and we joke about our carpet installing days. But I was playing every night. We played almost every single night.
Wow.
Back in the day. We did 21 nights in a row. One day we did 3 full shows in one day.
Wow.
Set up in the morning, did a show, tore down, went to Niagara Falls, played a Buffalo Bills exhibition game for the people after the game. Got done with that, tore down, went to the Club Lakewood in Niagara Falls and played that show. So we hit it hard. So later on, the travel of that was mostly just in the Buffalo area. But then later on, when we started traveling, doing the Yngwie tour, like I said earlier, those 2 hours of hot, sweaty, and then getting it to go somewhere. So it was a struggle. Nothing came easy. That's for sure.
Well, as Dad used to say, hard work is the only thing that pays off.
No kidding. I agree. Yeah. And I wish today's scene was better for younger players. They get to get out and perform, because we were on stage all the time. I mean, it was everything I tried out on my bass. Every new thing was always tested live for show after show after show after show. We had to sing. And when we first started singing, I remember the first time I saw a monitor. I go, what's this box on the stage? That's a monitor. A what? Oh,
yeah, well,
so we can hear ourselves? Unbelievable. Yeah. We used to turn the PA a little bit so we could kind of hear the edge of what was coming out. And I got tapes from back in the day. We're on pitch. We're okay.
Sure. Wow. Well, that's if you play every night, you figure out. So especially if someone's recording on some old, junky tape machine, and you're able to listen back to it somehow. You're like, oh, we need to fix that part. You're a little flat, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure that every night you guys were dialed in. It's like every show got better and better and better. That's just how it's supposed to work. And if you're not getting any better because you're on the road all the time, or playing so often that it's like literally daily with no sleep, boom travel, boom travel, boom travel. Woo.
Yeah.
Man.
Absolutely. It's the greatest training ground. It's the greatest training ground you can have. I to this day, so much that I learned from back in those days comes in very, very handy to me. Even as far as doing big shows and there's something wrong with some piece of gear, I go, well, let me take a look at it. Get my soldering iron. Because and all the work I've done on my basses, I did by myself. I couldn't afford to pay anybody to do it, and plus there wasn't anybody around. I think there were 1 or 2 guys in Buffalo that worked on guitars, if that. So you had to figure it out on your own. So it's a great way to train yourself to deal with everything imaginable in the business, because eventually everything will come at you, everything beyond your imagination, and being fully prepared for it by so many years of that glorious struggle, if you will. It was a blessing in disguise, very well disguised, but certainly in disguise.
So you've always had an awesome set of tools.
Yeah, I used to carry in my little carry-on bag my toolkit. So when I check into a hotel, later on I would do this. We would, just because I'm an anti-rock star, I don't like, I'm a musician, I'm not a rock star. I don't like the rock star thing at all. So I would go into a hotel and fix things. So the maid would come in and they'd say, hey, wait, this light wasn't working before. What the hell? It's just do the reverse of what rock stars are supposed to do. I'm going to go in the hotel, fix things, and clean up after myself too.
So you're in the room, and if the toilet seat is not connected to the toilet, you would get under there and you would.
We got it.
Yeah.
So wow, that's interesting because I wanted to ask you about your time with Dave because David Lee Roth, everybody. The outward appearance is he's just on all the time, just almost maniacal. and you seem to be a little more grounded. Everybody seems a little more grounded next to Dave. So how were your personalities compatible, or did you have to really work to sort of coexist with the David Lee Roth who's just on all the time?
He is a phenomenon of nature, and he's still my hero, and I'm still supremely and forever grateful for the break he gave me. And we had a ride together. We had a wonderful time. He was a jokester and a comedian. And as a matter of fact, 2 of the guys were part of the Dave gang, we called ourselves, back in the summer of '85 and into '86. When we're putting everything together. Steve and Alan, you worked for Van Halen, and then they came and worked for Dave. Most everybody left Van Halen when Dave left and went with Dave. All the crew guys. Financial people and tour managers and all that. They were all the Van Halen guys, and they all came with Dave. So it was quite interesting. But he's. I learned so much from him. It's unbelievable. It was like getting a PhD in Showbiz 101. He knew it inside and out. and he is on. If he's not on, he's probably not there. He'll go. If he's not around, he's probably not on. But if he's around, he's on. Yeah. He's never not on.
I feel like he's one of these, like you said. You said it best. He's just kind of a one of a kind, without question.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and very smart and very good at coming. I just finished Ted Templeman's book, and Ted really praised his lyrics. And I don't think Van Halen would have been Van Halen without those lyrics, because they weren't your typical "Baby, I love you" lyrics.
Yeah,
right.
Ain't talking about love. I've been to the edge there. I stood and looked down. It was just great. His lyric writing. And the stuff he did on Eat 'Em and Smile was quite fantastic. I think if we would have kept that Eat 'Em and Smile vibe and style, the band would have really done incredibly well. Unfortunately, he made a left turn and did Skyscraper, but it takes a lot of courage to make that kind of a turn. I give him credit for the courage. I didn't like the results of it myself personally, but I like when Bowie was Ziggy Stardust, and suddenly he came out with the 1984 record.
Let's Dance, I think.
What's that?
Let's Dance.
Yeah, it was even before that.
Oh, wow.
When he broke up his original band with Mick Ronson, and then went off and just went into the dance kind of thing. It took a lot of guts, and so I think Dave kind of did that same thing with Skyscraper. Unfortunately, it was not as successful as it could have been.
Yeah. I want to jump ahead to Mr. Big. You had a #1 smash hit song with Mr. Big. The song was called "To Be With You," and to my ears, it was almost an unlikely hit because the arrangement of that song was not what you typically heard on the radio at that time. Were you surprised that song took off the way it did?
Sure was. We had no idea. It was last on the record. If we would have known it was a hit, we would have put it first.
Right.
We released 3 singles off that record, and just nothing was catching. Later on, all those songs at the live shows and such, everybody's singing along, but it was a very unlikely situation, and it was a very organic hit too, because a DJ in Lincoln, Nebraska named John Terry started playing the song and started getting phone action, meaning people called up and requesting it. And then the local stores in Lincoln started selling the record. And so it was looking really good, and it started spreading from there to other places. Atlantic Records, in their infinite wisdom, accused us of having our friends in Lincoln calling the station and going out and buying the records.
Did you guys have friends in Lincoln?
No. But at that point I said, "You mean we could have faked it?
Yeah.
I would have done that if I knew we could do it. I would have been, hey, anybody in Lincoln here's $50, go buy,
Sure.
I would, if I knew I could have cheated, I would have at that point. Yeah. But they actually flew a guy to Lincoln to look and make sure it was really happening. They didn't even believe it. And so sure enough, and we had a great A&R guy, Kevin Williamson. He's still a friend of mine here in Nashville. He fought for us tooth and nail, but the label they were completely resistant, and they would call radio stations that added "To Be With You." The label would call them and say, "Wait, no, you should add the Phil Collins record. We're trying to have a hit here, and they were actually resisted it and pushed it, but our manager Herbie, in his incredible wisdom and his amazing amount of power that he had, he just kept pushing for that, pushing for that, pushing for that. It started spreading and spreading, and then after we had a meeting with Doug Morris, he was the head of Atlantic Records at the time, and I remember after the record, and we're talking about the new next record, and he said in a meeting, he goes, "Well, I knew To Be With You was a hit the first time I heard it." I go, "You liar. It's not true. You fought it tooth and nail." And it was a pretty amazing story how it managed. So it's a little song, the little engine that could, the little song that could. And it became not only hit in America for 3 weeks. If it would have been in for 1 week, you'd have said, it's just a fluke. Two weeks, maybe it's a little longer fluke, but 3 weeks, okay, it's a hit record. And then 14 other countries, it was number one, and it was our passport to the world. We would get on a plane, and the flight attendant, were you guys in a band? Yeah. What's a band? Mr. Biggs. You go, I never heard of it. The one. You're kidding.
Yeah.
The pilot would come out, shake our hands. We get free drinks and moved up to first class. And
that's hysterical.
We arrived at the airport in, I believe it was Singapore. And we knew that Singapore's are very, very, very strict. It says right on the landing card that you fill out, warning, mandatory death sentence for drug trafficking. It's right on there. Right on there. Fly to Singapore. It's in red, warning, mandatory death sentence for drug trafficking. So now we weren't a drug band at all. So we weren't worried about things like that. But still, it was like, uh-oh. And I remember back in the day, Singapore had a barbershop in the airports. If you came in with long hair, you had a choice. Go get it cut or get out. And it was a pretty strict country. So we got there. And the airplane door opened up and for everybody to get off, and the police came on the plane, and they were looking for us. Yeah. And we thought, oh my God, this could be, because they wanted our autograph.
Oh,
we're like, oh, okay, no problem.
So they didn't come on with machetes; they came on with Sharpies.
Yeah, exactly.
Or clippers, apparently.
And they just whisked us right past immigration and customs. We could have had anything in our suitcase, and nobody would have known about it.
Red carpet.
Was that
red carpet?
Oh, it was unbelievable. And then we didn't know, but the radio station had announced when our flight was getting in. So we're behind a wall that once you go around the corner, you're in public, and people waiting to pick up people that just flew in and landed. We heard this little noise. What the hell's going on out there? We turned the corner. There was about 5,000 kids at the airport, and they rushed, and we backed up. And finally, the police decided, we'll make a gauntlet, and you guys walk through it. And this is why we know those will never work. One step into the gauntlet, the crowd crushed. There was billy clubs and cop stuff falling on the floor, and we just ran to the cars, and Paul got scratched up. Some fan tried to grab him, and it was so having a hit record leads to many adventures.
Yes.
All around the world, apparently. Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Wow.
That's amazing. If anybody ever gets to live an experience like that, even one time, that has to just blow your mind that a song.
We are supremely, all of us, supremely grateful.
Yes,
for all of it.
You knew where I was going. It's kind of a heart, a giant heart pump that you help someone smile that day. You know.
Yeah, and even to this day, I get, I spend a lot of time. Some people criticize me for it, but I read every comment, and the thumbs up or heart every comment, and every piece of email that comes my way, I respond. Sometimes maybe not right away, but I'm thinking, somebody in Pakistan writes to me, and I write back, thank you so much. I hope I get to your country someday. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure it made him feel very good that someone would just acknowledge him and thank him for his communication. And for me, all I got to do is write my name down, a autograph, and someone is very happy. That's pretty easy. That's a pretty great gig. Yeah. Just people come up, would you sign my, whatever? So of course I will, and it's nice to be able to spread a little joy like that to people due to the fact that we've had some success and people listen to the music. And as a musician, you put something out, you don't know how it's touching people. And I have a whole giant file of emails of people that were down on their luck or doing bad and considered suicide or have some terrible physical ailment. And I'd write back and, just do my best. A little awkward sometimes, especially if somebody's in really bad shape, but would just do my best to encourage them. And it's for me, that is a real payoff to be able to do that for people.
Oh yeah,
I think it's awesome that you view it that way, because a lot of guys in your situation that have been doing this as long as you have can easily get jaded. So I love to hear that you see the value in that and that you take the time to do it, because I know it's got to be time consuming as well. So
yeah, absolutely. But it really is a joy. I really do enjoy. I got amazing friends on social media. As much as social media can dog you and be awful and terrible in so many ways, there's a lot of good about it too. And people from back in the day getting in touch with me that I probably would have never heard from again, ever, in the 70s when I was playing in Buffalo. And it's pretty great. There is a little bit of good in the world. Not that it's easy to find sometimes, but it is there.
Right. Well, good on you for doing that.
Yeah,
we got to talk about Winery Dogs real quick before we let you go. Tell us how you ended up crossing paths with Portnoy and Richie Kotzen, and how did that band develop, and what's your status today? I know you've when the last album was Hot Streak.
Yeah.
And that came out a while ago. Now, obviously, you're a busy man, and so are the other guys. Kotzen's out doing something with Adrian Smith. Anyway, tell us how the band formed, how you met those guys, and where you are today with Winery Dogs.
Sure thing. Yeah, we just finished a new record. It's mixed, mastered. I just saw the cover art and had dinner with Richie last night. He's in Nashville to play tonight. I'm going to go out and see him play. Mike and I started getting involved years ago. We did a Rush tribute record, a Mike Varney record, and we stayed in touch. And then we ended up doing a Who tribute show. Paul Gilbert as Pete Townsend, Gary Sharon as Roger Daltrey, Mike as Keith Moon, of course, and myself as John Entwistle. In a way, awesome. It's funny because when we did one of our shows, I tweaked my back horribly, so I had to wear a back brace under my shirt. So I'm playing like really stiff. Wow, he's doing that whistle exactly. He even stands like him.
Yeah, Entwistle was kind of a lurch.
Yeah, he was kind of the standing foundation rock of the band. He's a wonderful guy. I had a great opportunity to meet him and hang with him in L.A. a bunch. But anyway, so I played with Mike in a lot of things. And on the other parallel line, Richie and I had been friends for years and years and years when he first moved out to L.A. And I always loved his playing. When Paul Gilbert left Mr. Big for a while, Richie came in and played. And it was just great, really great. And he sang his ass off. So Mike and I said we should do a band and find a guitar player that sings. Yeah, okay. And we were talking with Eddie Trunk about it. And I'm thinking, God, I got to know some great guitar player who sings really good. I don't know why Richie didn't come to my mind, but Eddie Trunk just looked at it and go, Richie Kotzen. I go, well, of course. So, I slapped my forehead and we got in touch with Richie, went over to his house. And I think that very first day we went over to speak with him, Mike and I, we went into the little room with the drum kit, and there was a bass hung on the wall and a little amp. And we put together a few songs, I believe that very first day, just sitting jamming, or at least the foundation of a couple. And then in Richie's little home studio, we put that first record together. And for me, Eat 'Em and Smile, Lean Into It, and the first Winery Dogs record are my big three records that I've ever been involved with. Pretty amazing. A lot of other great records too, but those three are the top for me. And so that first Winery Dog record, that was a miracle.
So good.
Drinking there, Billy.
What do you got in the mug?
A little too much Bailey's with my coffee there.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, the first Winery Dogs record, I remember when it was finished, I was playing it for all my friends. And a lot of times I do a record and I don't play it for everybody. Yeah, I don't know why.
That's a good
so
feeling.
Smile I did. Yeah. Lean Into It I did. And certainly the first Winery Dogs record. So it's a joy to play in a three-piece band.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room for bass. Most of my years in Talas were the three-piece version, and so that was kind of what I grew up on. And it's just a riot to work with Richie. He's also a dear friend. Mike as well. We're all good friends, and on stage it's a powerful locomotive roaring down the tracks. And I watch Mike like a hawk because I'm all about the drummers and drums, and he's just a brilliant player. And I'll do he'll do a chicken-da-pop, and I'll do a chicken-da-pop on the same exact thing on my bass. We look at each other like, how did you know that? I don't know. How did you know? We get the bass and drum ESP happening. Really, really cool. And Richie's voice is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I'll be out to see him, like I said, tonight here in Nashville.
Is it?
Very
I'm
cool.
not going to ask you to tell us your influences, but is it fair to say that you might possibly have been as influenced or more influenced by guitarists than bassists, considering your style?
Actually, no. All music and musicians, including a lot of classical music, a lot of cello stuff, a lot of keyboard things. I listened to Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier. I had a Bach set back in the LP days at vinyl. It was 3 records per box, 7 boxes, 21 records, 42 sides of one guy playing the harpsichord. That's a lot of
Harpsichord.
and it was a very pivotal record for me because the inventions, literally that's what they were called too. The left hand being the bass hand and the right hand being somewhat the lead hand, not always true in all cases, but nevertheless. And hearing that left hand work with the right hand, not only doubling what it does, but counterpoint and independence between the two, for me, was what bass and guitar should be. Sometimes you're holding a note, of course, but then other times you move, and when you move, it makes that sound different. Play the same notes over and over again, move the bass line underneath them, and they're going to sound different. So that was a big, huge influence on me. Guitar, of course. My first concert was Jimi Hendrix. And I was a guitar fan, but and on that note, even more so with drums. I saw Billy Cobham play with Dreams, the band before Mahavishnu Orchestra, where we got the title for the song Inner Morning Flame from.
Yeah.
Billy Cobham with that band, the Brecker Brothers on horns, and man, he changed the drum world completely. And it's always been about drums. So yeah, guitar is a big part of my life, but other things I think are in there equally, if not more so.
Yeah.
Wow, I guess the world never realized that you're playing harpsichord rock and roll on the bass. You know what I mean? You're kind of like, harpsichord stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's
there's
amazing.
well, thank you. I'm still learning and I'm still working on it. And I'm down here in my little studio every day. I get up, feed the cat, and I go for a couple of hours on this thing. And still learning a lot more about everything. It never ends. Some kid wrote to me years ago, said, I've been playing bass for 6 months and I'm bored. What should I do? And I wrote back, quit. It's not for you, Joe.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. That kind of puts it in perspective big time. I saw an interview or read an interview with you, and this was so long ago. It could have been a radio thing. I don't know. But you went off a little bit about the brilliance of AC/DC. Wow. And I never forgot it, because a player like you, someone who is, for lack of a better term, busy on the bass, but still appreciates one note for 3 minutes.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
And how important that is for the other instruments to play against, and not be bored, because you have to be in the pocket. There's all of these things that are important to the song, to the singer, to all the instrumentation, to the hooks, even if it's one note for 3 minutes.
Oh yeah, I remember
I
when
think that
first heard AC/DC, they blew our minds. I absolutely love that band.
Yeah, and I think it was more of an Angus comment that you gave about how, here's Angus Young playing one note guitar solos. He's playing a guitar solo for 1 minute, just
spectacular,
making it do all of this. He's playing one effing note for a long time, and the band's just pumping behind it, and the audience is going wackadoo and starry-eyed and out of control. And this was something that I found amazing, that you, who has a lot of respect, people were hearing you talk about someone playing one note for a long time. I mean,
so great. I remember the first Aerosmith record, Tom Hamilton, the song One Way Street. They said, headed down a one-way street. He just put 2 bass notes there in the middle of that breakdown of I love that aspect of it. So I I like to be able to do anything to be able to play anything that I'm hearing or someone else can do, some weird harpsichord thing or some flute solo or whatever. I like to have those capabilities, but I also like to play music, which requires you to do all kinds of things. I produced a singer-songwriter here in Nashville named John Statham, and just these amazing story songs. Everyone I played the record, there are tears coming out of their eyes.
Wow.
These unbelievable songs. And I played bass on it, which required me to play, that was it.
Play quarters,
giant whole notes,
yeah.
and it was beautiful. People assume, he's just going to want to go crazy all night long.
Oh no,
it's all about the placement, right?
oh no.
I agree. Yeah.
And one more question. You've been more than gracious with your time, but I want to end on a Talas note since we brought you here to talk about Talas today and many other things. Thank you for indulging us. The new album, 1985. Now, Phil is no longer with us, unfortunately. Do you have any plans to possibly bring in a singer and tour that record?
No plans, but there are some intentions. We would like to honor Phil by having this music heard, spreading the word about the record so more people will hear him. Phil was an incredible person, one of the really finest human beings I've ever worked with. Not a single trace of lead singer's disease. He was the nicest guy you could ever imagine. Friendly and cool with everybody all the time, dynamic performer, great songwriter. And he sang this record. We didn't know at the time. He knew he was having a serious health situation, but he got up to that mic and annihilated every time. It was just incredible. Finding out later that he knew when he was singing increased, if it was even possible, to increase my respect for him any more than I already had, even more, because he shouldered a terrible burden, but got up anyway and sang his ass off and really delivered on this record. So it was quite inspiring to see. And
He sounds amazing. He sounds like he's a complete powerhouse.
So great.
Yeah.
So we initially we did this record when talk about the good old days of '85, but it's kind of morphed into I want this record to be Phil's legacy. For he's got two wonderful sons and a wonderful family that loves him completely, and we all in the band do too. So we would really like it to be a little stamp of legitimacy on his legacy, that he did such an incredible job on this record. And well, we hope we can perform in some capacity. There's a couple of people that have come forward that might be interested in singing, so we'll see.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm sure there's people
I love it that Metal Blade Records is behind it 1,000%.
They really are.
It's really great to see an old school label be there with you guys.
Oh yeah. The guy, one of the heads at Metal Blade, Mike Faley, he and I went to grammar school together. He was the we stole him from another band. He was a crew guy for another band. We stole him. He was a roadie, and then a monitor mixer, then front of house mixer, and then we moved him off that, and he was our agent and then co-manager. And then when I moved out to LA, I brought him out there to take care of my biz, and he got the gig at Metal Blade. Wow. And so we've been together since grammar school. So my connection to Metal Blade is a strong one at the heart for sure.
Wow. Well, Billy, we're going to let you go. We can't thank you enough for all your time today. You've been more than gracious. Thank you for indulging us with all your great stories, man. You're the kind of guest we love to have on this show because you're a great talker and you've got so many great stories. We wish you continued success in all your endeavors. We hope the 1985 album is heard by many, many people, both for you and for the legacy of Phil, as you mentioned. It's a great record, folks. Look for it in September. It's called 1985, Talas. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, with a huge thanks to our special guest today, Billy Sheehan, on the Talk Louder podcast.
I don't mean any harm by this. It's a Zoom thing, but like they're looking for the exit button. They're trying to leave the meeting, and I'm kicking them.
See you later, Billy.
I don't want to kick Billy Sheehan out of our Zoom room.
man.
It's the last person I want to kick out of the room.
This sinking feeling in your heart.
But you know what I mean? As I'm doing, I'm like, I'm just going to hell. I'm just going to hell for kicking Billy Sheehan out of the room.
Oh, man.
But, you know, we're still recording, and we're going to do our intro now.
Yeah, and then I got to get to work. But wow, what a guest, huh?
Yeah, it was awesome.
He was awesome.
What a sweetheart. I knew it was going to be good. And we got in all the punches, you know, with the history and the stories and the Portnoy, the name dropping, right?
Yes. Yeah. And
I'll
he was
mention that in the intro whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right.